is fast changing and news breaks at lightning speed. Let us guide you through events and stories about global narratives and developments in geopolitics, diplomacy, foreign affairs, and world economy. Get factual and multi-angle perspectives on stories around the globe. Global Television brings you Diplomatic Perspective every Monday and Friday with Ramsey Enoch Agbo. Diplomatic Perspective, the world in front of you.
Hello everyone, and welcome to another beautiful day. This is another time for us to bring you Diplomatic Perspective on Global Television, coming to you live from the nation's capital, Abuja, Nigeria. I am Ramsey Enoch Agbo. Now, I'll bring you some very striking stories from around the globe, beginning from EU, that's European Union, which has said they are ready to step in after deadly Venezuela earthquake. Well, we want to sympathize with Venezuela. The European Union Commission spokesperson, talking about Evra Hensurova, has confirmed the EU is ready to step in to help in Venezuela after two heavy earthquakes left at least 164 people dead and nearly 1,000 injured. According to the statement that came, they said as partners, they are already on ground, and of course the Red Cross Society is already carrying the rescue operation, and they said they are also ready to mobilize assistance through the UCPM. This is coming from her. But then I think it's very interesting, because if you look at everything that happened in Venezuela, personally, I don't wish anyone earthquake. It's a natural disaster. Sometimes you can't really help it. But then our condolences to the families that lost their loved ones in that earthquake. All right. Let's take you to another story that has to do with European Union chief, who have said Ukraine's place in the European Union will become a reality. It's going to become a dream come true very soon. Now, this is the story. A landmark conference on Ukraine's post-war reconstruction opened in Poland without President Volodymyr Zelensky, who is snubbing the event over a diplomatic role with Ali Warsaw. Kyiv, as a matter of fact, needs hundreds of billions of dollars to repair the damage caused by Russia's invasion, and is actually trying to whip up international support for investment, which is very, very important. But then, the event comes with no end to the fighting in sight and could be overshadowed by the spat between Ukraine and Poland, which triggered when Ukraine named a military unit after an insurgent group that took part in the massacre of Poles during World War II. Someone might be saying that's a very long time, but then this is an aftermath. All right, this is more like a reflection. But then, leaders from Poland, Bulgaria, Estonia, Finland, Latvia, Lithuania, Romania, and Sweden, as well as EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen and EU Council head, talking about Antonio Costa, will meet in the northeastern part city of Gdansk to urge businesses and countries to pour cash into Ukraine when the conflict ends. But then, when is the conflict going to end? That's another thing that a lot of people are talking about right now. Oftentimes, you will see that to begin a war is not difficult, but putting this war to an end is a difficult and herculean task. We heard in the past where you hear people say things like, well, let's sign a peace deal, all right? But then after signing the peace deal, you still see some persons going, all right, to wage war again. And so to begin a war is more easier than stopping a war. That's, by the way, well, that's the story right there. Can we go to Sweden right now, where Swedish Minister Britt Grant bringing baby to EU talks? You know, when I was going through this story, I said, well, different stroke for different folks. In some places it wouldn't happen, but this is exactly what happened in Sweden. Let me bring you the full story, how it happened. And if you feel, well, in my climb, this cannot happen, you can also let us know in the comment section. This is Sweden's environment minister who brought her baby to an EU meeting. Don't worry, I'll tell you how old the baby is, because it's not just bringing a baby to that kind of crucial meeting. Well, that is in a barrier-breaking move. She said she showed it was possible to be both a present minister and a present mother. Yeah, you are a minister, but that doesn't negate the fact that you can also be a mother and that you can also be, of course, a minister. Now, how possible do you think it would be for her to combine nursing a baby and being a minister? Yes, these are questions that we should be asking. Then, for each country, what are the things required of a minister? Ministers have special assistants, people who work with them, aides and all of that. Maybe that's the reason she could combine both motherhood and ministerial appointment. But then Romina arrived at the ministerial talks in Luxembourg with her 3-month-old son. I told you I was going to tell you the name of the child and of course how old the child is. The name of the child is Adam, and of course Adam is just 3 months. I'm just imagining how little that baby is. She actually came in with the baby in a sling with a pram pushing aid in tow, becoming the latest public figure to shake up conversations around motherhood and work. I already talked about that, and the EU officials said it was thought to be the first time in history that the baby was actually brought to one of the bloc's ministerial meeting. Mothers are particularly affected by the challenge of juggling work and childcare. Then, let me say this. Well, I stand to be corrected, but then I think the women can actually bear me witness about that. Work or childcare, then there is a bigger child there, which is the husband, even though the man could actually manage 1 or 2, but then there are times that the man would also need the woman who is the wife, who is a general mother for the kids, and also with the husband. But then in her own case, studies showing that women tend to miss out on promotions, career opportunities, and higher earnings after having a child. In a bid to make the lives of female lawmakers easier, the European Parliament recently changed its internal rules to allow new mothers the right to vote by proxy. That's good. I wish that could happen in my dear country, Nigeria. It's possible. Don't you ever think it's not possible? It's possible. There is nothing we cannot get right in Nigeria as a country. If we really want to make it right, we have our laws, we have constitutions which can be reviewed, all right, to make a certain things fit in to suit certain purposes. But what's the place of women? How are women really recognized when it comes to political offices? You need to consider this first before you talk about even a minister, all right, who is also a mother and coming for a crucial meeting with a 3-year-old, 3 months, no, yes, even 3 months old Adam, baby boy, right? We wish her all the best in her career as a minister. Now, let's move to the Hormuz now, because There is a statement coming from Rubio talking about the U.S. Secretary of State. Rubio is warning that Hormuz tolls would spread, and that has been something that a lot of people have speculated. All right, I'm talking about the United States Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, who warned that any toll on ships passing through the Strait of Hormuz would set a precedent. All right, it's going to set a precedent and risks total chaos. While Oman said no fees would be imposed, Rubio's comments during a tour of the Gulf came hours after Iran repeated that ships must seek its authorization before crossing. The statement by Iran's Revolutionary Guards follow an announcement by neighboring Oman of a new temporary shipping route through the strait running close to its coast, which Iran appeared to denounce. But then Oman's top diplomat, for his part, said no transit fees would be imposed in the strait during a meeting of Gulf foreign ministers with Rubio. That's what he said. But there are reasons why he actually said that. Now, Iran's foreign minister Abbas Araghchi later emphasized the importance of continued coordination with Oman. All right. And just hold on. Let me say something. I'm going to tell you something now. We're talking about waterways here. There are people who believe that water is a natural resource. It is not something that the state creates. When we're talking about big oceans, that's something like the Strait of Hormuz. It is not an artificial water. This is natural water that was created by God. And there is this belief that international waterways do not belong to any nation state. That's what he said, all right? But then, how do you believe that? How I don't know, it's a school of thought. That's what he feels, and that's what he said. He said, well, international waterways does not belong to a particular nation. It doesn't mean whether River Niger is in Nigeria, all right, River Benue is in Benue State. It does not belong to Nigeria as a country because it's natural. But then it's a different ball game altogether when you talk about the Strait of Hormuz, and that is his own belief, and that's what he feels, and he has said it. But then this is a foundational and of course a foundational principle in the world today, without which the world would be in total chaos. Rubio told the Gulf Cooperation Council meeting in Bahrain, the future of the strait, a vital route for energy shipment that was blockaded by Iran during the war, is a key sticking point in negotiation between Tehran and Washington to end their war. But Tehran has said it plans to impose what it calls maritime services fees as opposed to tolls, while the United States argues that it is an of course arbitration. There's always an argument there, but then they also appear to denounce the new route released by Oman, but only refer to certain authorities rather than Muscat directly. I don't know why that had to happen, but then that's what it is. But let's come to think about it. Well, what happened at the Strait of Hormuz because of that fight actually affected a lot of other nations because of the kind of natural resources that go through the Strait of Hormuz. But then I think there seems to be a little light at the end of the tunnel. But then everyone in this world, including Nigerians, Iranians, people from other countries of the world, Venezuela, or talk about the United Kingdom, African nations, South Africa, Kenya, every country of the world, Canada, also wishing that, well, there is peace everywhere. Because if you've not encountered a warring situation, you may not really understand what we're talking about. All right. Let's move away from there, because talking about the Strait of Hormuz, it's also important to let us know that United States wants deal with Iran, but not at any price. Just let there be deal. Let's deal, but not at any price. Let me bring you the details, because Marco Rubio is also the one saying this. Remember, he is the U.S. Secretary of State, and he has said Washington wants to reach a deal with Iran, but not at any price, just free of charge, right? And this is exactly what he said, and I want to quote. He said, "We want a deal that's good. We want a deal that's real. We want a deal that is verifiable. And we want a deal that is adhered to," not just a deal. This was said by Rubio during our GCC US ministerial meeting in Manama. Now, these are conditions, all right? These are conditions. We want a deal, but then not at any price, all right? Maybe they just spoke like word power, as the case may be. You know who the United States is. Maybe they just spoke as a word pass. But then, let's see. I think something is already working out. But then, I think it will be to the benefit of both nations, because no nation is ever at peace where there is war. Now, let's take you to, I just want to talk about Kestama a little bit, all right, before I end the program, before I end the show. I want to talk about Kestama a little bit. UK Prime Minister Kestama started the Great British Summer Savings Scheme. As a matter of fact, European leaders offered Britain's outgoing Prime Minister Kestama kind words at a Berlin meeting, days after he announced his resignation following what we call months of pressure and miserable poll numbers. Starmer appeared tense while representing his country in Berlin for a meeting with the leaders of Germany, France, Italy, and Poland just 2 days after he quit. Oh my God. I wish this can happen everywhere, all over the world. When people complain, when there is pressure, you just said, all right, I'm not worth being your prime minister anymore. I'm not worth being any minister anymore. I don't want to be your president anymore. Let me step aside for someone else. I wish what just happened with Keir Starmer happens all over the world, including Africa. It would have been a more better place than it is right now. Now the story. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz also told Starmer at a joint press conference that he has done a great deal to strengthen NATO and foster a united Europe. According to what he said, and I'm quoting him right now, he said this with a sense of regret that you are stepping down from office. But I'm all the more grateful for the excellent cooperation we have enjoyed over the past few months. That is our Polish minister, all right, Donald Tusk, also credited Starmer with patching up relations between the United Kingdom and the European Union after the bruising Brexit process. French President Emmanuel Macron said Starmer had done a lot in the last 2 years to strengthen the United Kingdom's role in Europe and within NATO. He did so with a dignity, decency, and courage. And Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni noted the excellent cooperation between their two countries, as well as between London and Europe. This is Keir Starmer, the man who is quitting his position as a Prime Minister. But then, it's so good. See, you can only be remembered by the things you have done, whether positive or negative. These are presidents of other nation, leaders of other nations, giving him accolade. I don't want to get emotional because I'm not from UK, of course. But then it's heart breaking somehow for some persons, especially leaders like this who were ready to work with Keir Starmer. But then it is good for the benefit of the people and for the benefit of the nation. not just because of an individual, but because of a nation. He has decided to resign his position as the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, and this is worth applauding. I'm applauding him because he's putting his country first, not United States alone that will say America first. This is Keir Starmer making a move just to please the people and ensure the country runs smoothly. As a matter of fact, the International Maritime Organization, that is IMO, has commemorated World Seafarers Day, which is observed annually in June. This year's celebration is themed Carrying World Trade, Carrying the Risk. And as a matter of fact, this year's Day of the Seafarers campaign highlights the hardship, pressure, and risk of life.
The International Day of Seafarers is a very important day that is celebrated annually every June 25th. And the purpose of this day is to celebrate the contribution of seafarers to the global trade and also to identify the challenges that seafarers are passing. As you are aware, more than 80% of global trade is being transported by sea. Every day, thousands of ships move food, they move raw material, they move medicine, they move consumable goods across the oceans and continents. And behind every vessel that move most of this commodity are the trained seafarers. So without seafarers today, the global supply chain is going to collapse because industries will struggle to get raw materials. That's how crucial seafarers are. So let's quickly look at most of the roles that the seafarers play in the global economy today. One, they move raw material from point of origin to point of destination. The cars we drive today in Nigeria, the food we consume today are being transported by ships. And without this, the seafarers, these ships are not going to transport most of these seafarers because seafarers are responsible for safe navigation of ships from one destination to the other. That is very, very important and very crucial. Another aspect is seafarers, they contribute to service to humanity. Let's look at the period of COVID-19 pandemic when everywhere was shut down, when the global economy was shut down, but seafarers were still moving. Seafarers were still transporting all the essential materials and all the essential medication that is required for humanitarian services, which is very important. Another contribution of seafarers is very unique, which has to do with safety of life at sea, because seafarers have obligation, to rescue people when they are in distress at sea. They have this obligation wherever there is a distress. When it comes to ship or aircraft, the seafarers are the point of contact, which is very important and unique. Then let's also look at the global supply chain. The global supply chain depends mainly on seafarers because they move more than 90% of seaborne trade by volume. And if you look at the percentage of trade that is being moved is mostly by sea. And without seafarers, most of this trade and commodity will not be possible. Without seafarers, entirely the global supply chain is going to collapse. A lot of industry today depends on raw materials for their production and for their manufacturing. Without seafarers that move most of these commodities from the point of production to the manufacturing side, is not going to be possible. So that's how important, how crucial the seafarers are when it comes to global trade. And when you also look at it, they contribute to the revenue generation, they contribute to the GDP. Because if you look at ports, the ports are the gateway to nation's economy. And without seafarers, the ports are not going to function. Because what happens in ports? Ships visit ports. And seafarers are those that are behind the safe navigation of ships that move ships from one point of destination to the other, which is very important. So the role of seafarers is indispensable. Seafarers have continued to play a crucial role when it comes to the global landscape.
High risk and conflict affected areas, while underscoring seafarers' essential role in keeping global trade moving. As a matter of fact, stakeholders put in perspective on how important they are in global maritime trade.
Now, Nigeria's growing focus on the blue economy recognizes the vast economic potentials of ocean resources. It recognizes the potentials of inland waterways, ports, fisheries, maritime transportation, coastal tourism, and also offshore resources. So, because of these potentials, seafarers are at the center to achieving this vision because they provide the skilled workforce needed to transport maritime goods, logistics, and also shipping. and also to be engaged in offshore operation and other port-related activities. So as Africa's largest economy, one of the continents that is leading in maritime transportation today, Nigeria depends heavily on maritime transport because more than 90% of imports and export is through the seaport. So therefore, it is very important and it is very crucial for us to strengthen the capacity and welfare of our citizens. How do we do that? One, we have to invest aggressively when it comes to maritime training. Maritime training and development is very important. We have to keep training seafarers. We must have a successful plan, which is very important. As these seafarers are aging, the next generation of seafarers are moving. So we need to train. We need to equip our maritime institution with state-of-the-art simulators. We need to train our seafarers with the latest curriculum and align with industry standard, which is very, very important and crucial. Another aspect is there must be a link between the academia and the industry. If you go to the maritime colleges today, a lot of seafarers produce extremely brilliant ideas when it comes to their thesis and dissertation, but how often are most of these theses and dissertation being implemented for commercial use? Is very rare. So there must be a link between the industry and the academia. Another aspect is about sea time, because without providing seafarers with sea time, we are not going to have qualified seafarers. We have a large number of maritime graduates today without the sea time. Even though the government has made a significant effort when it comes to the National Seafarer Development Program, where they have trained a lot of seafarers, but we still have a large number of seafarers that have graduated from the maritime academies, from the maritime colleges, and they don't have the opportunity to go to ships to gain the necessary requirement to become certified officer. Without sea time, we stand a risk of having shortfall of seafarers, which is very important. So the government need to provide bed space. Private sectors is very important for private ship owners, private operators to come together to provide adequate bed space for these cadets so that they will be able to become qualified officers tomorrow. Another emphasis that we must look into is there is a growing emphasis now when it comes to decarbonization and digitalization, because the world is changing. So as the world is changing, we also need to train our seafarers on the modern maritime skill techniques that align with the international digitalization practice. Now we have the 4th generation ports, we have the 4th generation ships. So we need to train most of our seafarers when it comes to digitalization. There's a great emphasis on reducing to nearly zero carbon by 2050. What does that mean? It means that we'll have alternative fuel supply for ship. The ship engine have to be designed in such a way that they will consume less fuel, such as hydrogen, such as methanol. So we need to train our seafarers on how to safely handle most of these ships. We need to train our seafarers so that they will align with the green shipping agenda, which is very important because the emphasis on green shipping today. Another emphasis that we must look into is about digitalization of our seafarers. Now, most of our charts are all on electronic charts. So there's also an increase in emphasis about autonomous ships. So our seafarers must have all the necessary skills that even when the autonomous ships have come to stream, the knowledge and skill of seafarers will still be needed to move the global trade forward, which is very important. Now, let's also look at maritime security, which is a very, very important aspect of shipping. Well, we have to thank the federal government today because the federal government of Nigeria has done remarkably well when it comes to the Deep Blue agenda. So when you look at the Deep Blue project, it has yielded a positive result because in the last...
Everyone, this is the size of the conversation on Diplomatic Perspective today. Diplomatic Perspective, return to your screen again for the next edition. My name is Ramsey Enoch Agbo. Bye-bye for now.
The world is fast changing and news breaks at lightning speed. Let us guide you through events and stories about global narratives and developments in geopolitics, diplomacy, foreign affairs, and world economy. Get factual and multi-angle perspectives on stories around the globe. Global Television brings you Diplomatic Perspective every Monday and Friday with Ramsey Enoch Agbo. Diplomatic Perspective, the world in front of you.